The celestial conclave station hung like a massive crystalline jewel against the backdrop of distant star clusters. Its intricate architecture showcased floating amphitheaters, bioluminescent corridors, and panoramic observation decks, offering breathtaking views of the cosmos. This marvel of engineering served as the gathering point for representatives of every major galactic civilization, a neutral ground where the fate of worlds had been decided for centuries. Today marked a historic occasion, the arrival of the first-ever human delegation to the conclave. Three figures emerged from their modest transport vessel: Dr. Naomi Clark, the science envoy; Colonel Marcus Egan, the military attaché; and Ambassador Layla Harrington, the chief diplomat. Their unadorned attire stood in stark contrast to the elaborate regalia adorning the alien envoys already assembled in the Grand Chamber. Where other species wore ceremonial armor embedded with bioluminescent circuits or robes woven from rare stellar materials, the humans wore simple, obsidian-colored formal wear that seemed almost mundane by comparison. As they entered the vast amphitheater, a ripple of murmurs cascaded through the assembled delegations. The humans moved with quiet confidence, their expressions revealing nothing as they took their seats on the lowest dais, the position traditionally reserved for new members. "The Earth delegation appears to have arrived," announced the Master of Ceremonies, a tall, willowy being with translucent skin that seemed to capture and refract the chamber's ambient light. "How quaint that they've chosen to attend in person, rather than sending holograms like civilized species." Polite laughter echoed across the chamber, but the humans remained impassive. Centuries of interstellar diplomacy had established rigid protocols for these gatherings: formal speeches, ritualized insults, displays of technological prowess, and eventually negotiations that invariably favored the established powers. Most species viewed humanity as a nascent, resource-rich planet, ripe for oversight or exploitation. Rumors had circulated that Earth's artifacts, dismissively referred to as old Terran relics, were of negligible value in the galactic marketplace. Embassy Proconsul Zandril of the Crystalline Accord stepped forward, his crystalline exoskeleton catching the light and sending prisms dancing across the walls. He stood tall, on the highest platform, looking down at the other delegates with barely concealed disdain. His species had been among the founding members of the conclave, and he carried himself with the arrogance that came from millennia of unchallenged authority. "Esteemed colleagues," he began, his voice amplified by hidden acoustics, "we gather once more to welcome new members into our illustrious fellowship." His gaze settled on the human delegation. "Today, we extend our gracious welcome to the representatives of Earth, a young world still finding its footing among the stars." Zandril activated a holographic display that materialized above the central floor. It showed Earth's fleet, a handful of unshielded frigates and aged chemical rockets, primitive compared to the sleek warships of the established powers. "As is customary, we shall begin with the submission charter," Zandril continued, "outlining the ceremonial requirements for Earth's integration into our community. The terms are quite generous, I assure you." His tone suggested otherwise. "Merely 90% of your planet's rare Earth elements, 60% of your water reserves, and of course, unrestricted access to your historical archives." He paused, clearly expecting protests, or at least nervous fidgeting from the human delegation. Instead, Dr. Clark, Colonel Egan, and Ambassador Harrington remained perfectly still. No flinches, no nervous glances, only unwavering gazes fixed on Zandril. The silence stretched beyond a polite pause. It grew uncomfortable, then unsettling. A Crystalline Accord subdelegate, thinking the humans inexperienced in galactic protocol, attempted a condescending question. "Do you have any clarifications regarding your surrender terms?" Still, no human spoke. Laughter rippled through the chamber, until it abruptly stopped. A sensor readout on several delegates' personal displays revealed something unusual. The Earth representatives showed no detectable fear signatures. Their biometric readings were perfectly stable. As the silence continued for over half an hour, unease spread through the assembly. A Varan emissary, a squat being with multiple sensory appendages, activated lie detection sensors, only to find the human profiles textbook perfect in physiological metrics. Their heart rates remained steady at exactly 72 beats per minute, unwavering despite the increasingly hostile atmosphere. Ambassador Zandril grew visibly uncomfortable. His repeated gestures to prompt the humans resulted in nothing but stone-faced silence. His crystalline appendages clicked together in agitation. "They've not blinked in 19 minutes," whispered a junior aide from the Iron Reach delegation to his superior. This observation spread quickly, prompting whispers that perhaps these humans weren't alive at all, but some form of sophisticated projection or simulation. While the delegates speculated, Dr. Clark's mind remained active behind her impassive exterior. She mentally reviewed classified intelligence about the Varathian Mercantile Armada's mysterious disappearance 6 months prior. That incident had been filed as an unexplained communications blackout and blamed on a cosmic anomaly. The final transmission in the Varathian archives had read, "Negotiations concluded, terms accepted." The same phrase now echoed in Clark's thoughts. Colonel Egan similarly recalled battlefield data indicating that the Varathian fleet had vanished without signs of combat damage, just as the Rakthani had in prior accounts. These thoughts remained hidden behind his unwavering gaze. The Council's high scanners attempted to reclassify the human delegates, testing for synthetic implants, neuroanomalies, or stealth cloaks. The results were impossible to interpret. Pulse rates remained exactly at 72 beats per minute. Neural oscillations registered as perfectly symmetrical, indicating artificial stabilization. Several ambassadors exchanged alarmed looks. Could Earth have developed perfect synthetic constructs indistinguishable from real humans? The implications were disturbing. "We demand an explanation for this mockery of Council protocol," Zandril finally exclaimed, his composure cracking. As if in response, communications within the station began to flicker. Static replaced routine data streams. Zandril's subordinates reported inability to contact their homeworld. A low-level technician's voice came over the public channel. "Our quantum uplinks are jammed. Source unknown." Without warning, the starfield visible through the Conclave Station's massive observation windows distorted. Hundreds of sleek vessels materialized from apparent empty space, forming a perfect blockade around the station. These ships dwarfed the Council's flagship cruisers, their matte black hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light. The Crystalline Accord's emissary gasped. None of this aligned with known intelligence. Earth was documented as having at most 20 antiquated ships. Now, there were 2,500 warships, each equipped with energy shields, FTL jammers, and weapon systems that outclassed every Council member's fleet. Colonel Egan finally spoke, his voice calm and unwavering. "Negotiations concluded. Terms accepted." The shock in the chamber was palpable as understanding dawned. The Council had been manipulated. Ambassador Layla Harrington rose, her movement so subtle that observers almost missed it. In a voice of quiet authority, she delivered Earth's terms. Immediate resignation of all territorial claims bordering known human-colonized systems. Divestiture of exotic resource concessions in sectors designated Terra Accord zones. Subordination of interstellar trade routes to the newly formed Earth Consortium Authority. She paused, allowing the gravity of these demands to sink in, then added, "You have 6 hours to ratify these terms or face complete neutralization." As Harrington spoke, monitors throughout the chamber revealed every major planet's communication uplinks under Earth's control. A Varathian dreadnought attempted to open fire, only to have its weapons neutered by an Earth-deployed energy dampener. Ambassador Zandril made one last attempt at defiance. "This is outrageous! We will rally our allied fleets and—" Before he could finish, Colonel Egan made a subtle gesture. Earth's stealth frigates executed a barrage of precision strikes, disabling the Council Station's hyperdrive generators without causing casualties. The station was effectively under siege. In that moment, the entire chamber, delegates, arbitrators, even Xandril, realized that Earth had executed a bloodless coup. Their silence and apparent vulnerability had lured all major powers into one location, while Earth's hidden fleet assumed control of key strategic positions throughout known space. Dr. Clark stepped forward, activating a holographic display of her own. It showed evidence that the Vorathian Mercantile Armada had not been lost to cosmic randomness, but assimilated into Earth's industrial complexes. Thousands of Vorathian vessels now served as mining platforms in Terra's outer colonies. Additional projections showed Vorathian crews adapting to agricultural work under Earth's guidance, echoing conversion programs previously used on the Rakthani and others. The humans had been systematically absorbing rival powers for months, perhaps years, all while maintaining the facade of a primitive civilization. Overwhelmed by the evidence, jamming fields, disabled defense arrays, captive fleets, numerous ambassadors began submitting to the ultimatum. The Iron Reach delegate lowered his optisensors in defeat. Earth holds the keys to every major strategic system, he acknowledged. The Chronic General quietly tapped his command console. Cease all hostile maneuvers. We submit to the Earth Consortium Authority. Only the Ebon Syndicate from the Void Border attempted resistance, issuing a half-hearted threat. We'll withdraw to our strongholds and continue guerrilla skirmishes. In response, Colonel Egan dispatched a single stealth corvette to their headquarters, an unspoken warning that Earth's reach extended even to supposedly hidden bases. The Syndicate's transmission immediately signaled surrender. Ambassador Harrington offered a gesture of cooperation. Once you sign the accords, you will receive equitable shares in Terra's reconstruction projects. This olive branch cemented the Council's capitulation. 6 hours later, the human synthetics returned to their original seats. The Council floor was now a formal array of signed accords and placards reading Earth Consortium Authority in multiple alien languages. Dr. Clark and her team watched as representatives swore fealty to the new order. Earth had not only avoided open conflict, but had established de facto hegemony through silent dominion. As the three humans rose together, their perfect synchronization signaled unity between synthetic proxy and real delegation. They exited, the chamber's massive gates closing behind them with a resounding thud that echoed through the station. In that silence, the galaxy learned that true power does not always cry victory. It merely refuses to speak. The shuttle ride back to Earth's command vessel was quiet. The synthetic proxies of Dr. Naomi Clark, Colonel Marcus Egan, and Ambassador Layla Harrington sat motionless, their purpose fulfilled. In a secure chamber aboard the Eclipse, Earth's flagship, the real delegation watched the feed from their counterparts' optical sensors. Dr. Clark removed her neural interface crown, the device that had allowed her to control her synthetic double from across vast distances. She massaged her temples, feeling the strain of maintaining perfect composure for hours. "It worked," she said, her voice a mix of disbelief and triumph. "They actually surrendered." Colonel Egan removed his own interface, his weathered face showing relief. "The silent dominion strategy. I had my doubts. But you were right, Naomi." Ambassador Harrington was the last to disconnect. She stared at the screen, showing the council chamber, now filled with subdued delegates signing accords. Is this really what we wanted? To become the very thing we once feared? "We became what we needed to become," Clark replied, moving to the observation window. Outside, Earth's massive fleet, hidden for years in secret shipyards, moved into formation. Remember what they did to the Centauri colonies? The mining operations that stripped entire worlds bare. We couldn't allow that to happen to Earth. Egan joined her at the window. 8 million dead on New Mars when they miscalculated atmospheric processing. They called it an unfortunate incident. I call it negligent genocide. Harrington nodded reluctantly. I know the justifications. I wrote half of them. But we've essentially conquered the galaxy through deception. Does that make us better than them? We didn't fire a shot, Clark pointed out. Not one casualty. When the crystalline accord subjugated the Rigelians, they glassed 3 continents as a demonstration. We've shown more restraint than any conquering force in galactic history. On a nearby console, reports streamed in from Earth's covert operations throughout the galaxy. Hidden fleets emerging from stealth, communications centers being secured, resource depots coming under human control. Years of preparation, all executed in perfect synchronization. The Council will expect to meet the real us eventually, Egan said. We can't maintain the synthetic facade forever. We don't need to, Clark replied. Just long enough to secure our position. By the time they realize what's happened, the new order will be established fact. Harrington moved to a star chart displaying humanity's newly claimed territories. And then what? We become benevolent overlords. History is littered with empires that began with noble intentions. We implement the reclamation protocols, Clark said firmly. Gradual transition to the Confederacy model. Autonomous regions with fair resource distribution. Everything we discussed. Unless power changes us first, Harrington murmured. The Eclipse's commander, Captain Rivera, entered the chamber with a formal bow. Dr. Clark, Colonel Egan, Ambassador Harrington, Earth Prime is requesting your presence. The Security Council wishes to commend you personally. Of course they do, Egan said with a thin smile. We just handed them a galaxy, as they prepared to depart. Clark lingered at the window. The celestial conclave station was visible in the distance, its crystalline structure catching the light of the nearby star. For centuries, it had been the seat of power that kept humanity marginalized. Now it was simply another outpost in Earth's expanding sphere of influence. Was it worth it? Harrington asked, pausing at the doorway. Clark considered the question. Ask me in a century, when we see what we've built with this power. And if we become what we overthrew? Then someone will do to us what we did to the Council, Clark replied. And perhaps they'll deserve it. The Eclipse engaged its FTL drive, disappearing into the void with its escort fleet. Behind them, the galaxy began its first day under human rule, all because 3 figures sat in silence and refused to speak. In the following weeks, the reality of Earth's conquest settled across the galaxy. The initial shock gave way to a strange, uneasy peace, as the promised equitable shares in reconstruction projects actually materialized. Unlike previous hegemonic powers, Earth appeared to be honoring its commitments. On Viridia Prime, former seat of the Varathian Mercantile Armada, Dr. Clark supervised the integration of local governance with Earth's oversight protocols. She walked through a marketplace that 6 months ago had been exclusively alien territory, now bustling with human and Varathian merchants trading side by side. The transition proceeds more smoothly than anticipated, noted her aide, a young lieutenant named Patel. Resistance has been minimal. Fear is a powerful motivator, Clark replied, stopping to examine a stall selling Varathian crystalline fruits. They saw what happened to the Conclave. Nobody wants to be made an example. Is that all it is, fear? Clark purchased a fruit with newly minted Earth Consortium currency. Not entirely. The previous regime wasn't exactly beloved. The Varathians taxed their client worlds at 90%. We're asking 60%. To many, we're the lesser evil. For now, Patel said. Your skepticism is noted, Lieutenant, Clark replied with a small smile. And shared. This is why oversight protocols include civilian oversight committees. Power must be checked. As they continued their tour, a Varathian elder approached them. His chitinous exoskeleton bore the marks of age, deep grooves etched into the normally smooth surface. He bowed slightly, a gesture that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Dr. Clark," he said, his translator converting clicking mandibles into smooth standard. "I am Elder Varick. I served as administrator of the Southern Continent before your arrival." Clark returned the bow. "Elder Varick, I've read your governance records. Your resource distribution programs were remarkably efficient. Yet I am no longer administrator," he noted without apparent bitterness. "The transition requires neutral parties. Once protocols are established, local governance will resume under Confederation guidelines." The elder studied her for a moment. "You believe this? That power, once taken, will be relinquished?" "I do," Clark said firmly. "It must be, or we become what we fought against." "An interesting philosophy from conquerors," Varick replied. "I have lived through 3 regime changes. Each promised reform. Each believed itself different. And yet you're speaking to me openly, without fear of reprisal," Clark pointed out. "Would that have been possible under the previous administration?" Varick's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "A fair observation. Perhaps this conquest will indeed prove different." He gestured toward the marketplace. "My people are pragmatic. We adapt. But know this, Dr. Clark, the same silence that won you the galaxy can be turned against you. Remember that when you hear nothing from subjugated worlds." With another slight bow, he departed, leaving Clark pondering his words. "He threatened you," Patel said, hand moving subtly toward his sidearm. "No," Clark replied. "He warned me. There's a difference. Make a note. Elder Varick should be considered for the Planetary Oversight Committee. We need voices willing to speak uncomfortable truths." On the former Chronic homeworld, Colonel Egan supervised the integration of military forces. Unlike the Varathians, the Chronic were a martial society with strict codes of honor. Their surrender had been particularly difficult to secure. Egan stood on the parade grounds of the former Imperial War Academy, watching as human instructors trained alongside Chronic veterans. The integration was tentative, with clear tension visible in the rigid postures of the alien soldiers. General Asnar, the Chronic commander, who had surrendered at the conclave, approached with a formal salute. His scaled skin had a metallic sheen that caught the light of the binary suns overhead. "Your troops learn quickly," Asnar observed, "though they lack the endurance of Chronic warriors." "Different evolutionary paths," Egan replied, returning the salute. "We compensate with technology and strategy." "Indeed. Your strategy at the conclave." Asnar paused, mandibles twitching. "It was dishonorable by our standards, yet effective beyond question." "Honor is a luxury of the powerful," Egan said. "Earth couldn't afford it." "And now that you are powerful?" Egan considered the question. "Now we must relearn it, I suppose. But a different kind of honor. One based on actions, not rituals." Asnar gestured to the training field. "My warriors ask why they train with their conquerors. They wonder if you prepare them merely to die in human wars." "The galaxy is vast and largely unexplored," Egan replied. "The threats beyond known space don't care about our internal politics. United defense benefits everyone." Pretty words, yet your ships still surround our world. "They surround every world, including Earth," Egan pointed out. "The fleet serves the consortium now, not just humanity." Asnar's golden eyes narrowed. "You're synthetic at the conclave. It moved exactly as you do, spoke with your inflections. How was this achieved?" Egan smiled thinly. "That information remains classified." "Of course, I merely wonder, were they puppets or something more? If puppets, who pulled the strings? If more?" The general left the question hanging. "Does it matter?" Egan asked. "The outcome is the same." "It matters," Asnar insisted. A culture that would send artificial life to negotiate its most critical diplomatic mission reveals much about itself. As does a culture that values ceremonial combat over effective strategy, Agan countered. The two military men regarded each other with professional respect, tinged with wariness. My scientists have studied the weapon signatures from your fleet, Asnar said casually. Fascinating technology, not human in origin. Egan kept his expression neutral. All technology builds on what came before. Indeed. The energy patterns match late-era Varathian designs. Curious, given their fleet's disappearance coincided with your military expansion. I'm not at liberty to discuss classified operations. Asnar nodded. Of course. But know this, Colonel. Subjugation is not integration. Your silent dominion won you the galaxy. Keeping it will require something more. Ambassador Layla Harrington faced perhaps the most difficult task of all, transforming the Celestial Conclave Station from a symbol of alien authority to the administrative center of the Earth Consortium. The station's vast chambers, once filled with pompous ceremonies, now hosted practical governance meetings. She stood in what had been Embassy Proconsul Zandril's private chambers, now converted into her office. The crystalline walls had been reconfigured to show real-time data from across the consortium's territories. Zandril himself had been permitted to maintain a ceremonial position, a decision Harrington had fought for despite resistance from Earth's Security Council. He entered now, his once imposing frame somehow diminished, though his crystalline exoskeleton still caught the light impressively. Ambassador Harrington, he greeted her, his voice lacking its former arrogance. The Council representatives have assembled for the resource allocation meeting. Thank you, Proconsul, she replied, using his former title as a courtesy. Will you be attending? Is my presence required? The question held a hint of bitterness. Not required. Welcome. Harrington gestured to a chair. Your experience with the Outer Rim territories would be valuable to the discussion. Zandril seemed surprised by the invitation. You seek my counsel after what occurred? The conquest is over, Proconsul. Governance requires different skills than warfare. Skills you possess. He studied her for a moment. You're synthetic at the Conclave. It spoke with perfect diplomatic precision. Was that you controlling it, or a simulation? Harrington smiled enigmatically. Would knowing change anything? Perhaps not, but it would help me understand what manner of beings now rule the galaxy. The same beings who are willing to sit in silence, rather than accept subjugation. Harrington replied, Does that answer your question? Zandril made a sound that might have been a laugh. Partially. I have served on the Conclave for 3 centuries. Ambassador, I have seen empires rise and fall. Yours will be no different. Perhaps, but while it stands, it can be better than what came before. She activated a holographic display, showing resource distribution patterns across former Crystalline Accord territories. Your people diverted 90% of Sector 7's water to luxury resorts while colonists on the outer planets died of thirst. This can be rectified without significantly impacting your core worlds. Zandril examined the display. Pragmatic resource management was never the Accord's strength, he admitted. We preferred symbolic gestures, like demanding Earth's surrender without investigating our true capabilities. A fair barb, he conceded. We underestimated you. A mistake we will not repeat. Good, Harrington said. Because humanity's greatest strength isn't our fleet, or our technology, or even our strategic patience. It's our ability to adapt, to become what we need to be to survive. And what will you become with absolute power, I wonder? Harrington turned to face the window, where Earth ships maintained their vigilant positions. That remains to be seen, doesn't it? Will you attend the meeting? After a moment's consideration, Zandril nodded. I will observe, and perhaps contribute. That's all I ask, Harrington said. Small steps toward a new order. As they walked toward the council chamber, Harrington felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The conquest had been the easy part, executed through years of meticulous planning. Building something worthy of that victory. That was the true challenge. 1 year after the Conclave's surrender, Earth's leadership gathered in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains. The chamber, carved from solid granite and shielded against all known forms of surveillance, hosted the architects of the Silent Dominion. Dr. Clark, Colonel Egan, and Ambassador Harrington sat at a circular table with Earth Prime's Security Council. Holographic displays showed the current state of the consortium. Trade routes functioning at 127% of pre-conquest efficiency. Resource distribution reaching previously neglected worlds. And military integration proceeding smoothly in most sectors. The transition has exceeded expectations, announced the council chair, a stern woman named Director Kwan. The galaxy accepts Earth's authority with minimal resistance. For now, Clark cautioned, the real test comes with the implementation of Phase 2, the gradual transfer of power to regional authorities. Is that still necessary? Asked Councillor Mercer, the youngest member. The current arrangement functions well. Direct control ensures stability. Harrington frowned. Direct control was never the goal. The consortium was designed as a transitional authority, not a permanent empire. Plans change, Mercer replied, with a dismissive wave. The galaxy needs firm guidance. Without it, we risk returning to the chaos that preceded our intervention. Egan leaned forward. With respect, Counselor, that sounds remarkably similar to the justifications the Crystalline Accord used for their hegemony. We are not the Accord, Mercer snapped. We are bringing order and equitable resource distribution to worlds that never had it. At gunpoint, Clark observed quietly. Director Kwan raised a hand for silence. This debate was inevitable. The Silent Dominion succeeded beyond our wildest expectations. Now, we must decide what to build with that success. We already decided, Harrington insisted. The reclamation protocols were clear. Establish control, stabilize, then transition to a confederacy model with Earth as first among equals, not absolute ruler. A noble aspiration, Kwan acknowledged, but reality often requires adjustments to ideology. The room fell silent as the implications settled. The very success of their strategy had created a new temptation, to maintain the power they had seized rather than sharing it as promised. Clark stood, activating a new holographic display. It showed the synthetic proxies used at the conclave, their artificial nature now obvious in the detailed schematics. We created these to save humanity from subjugation, she said. Perfect replicas that could maintain absolute composure while we controlled them remotely. They were tools, not replacements. Just as our authority was meant to be a tool for transition, not permanent rule. Pretty metaphor, Mercer said. But galactic stability isn't built on metaphors. No, Egan agreed. It's built on trust. The conquered worlds comply because we promise something better than what they had before. Break that promise, and we'll face resistance that makes the Eben Syndicate look like a minor nuisance. Director Kwan studied the three architects of Earth's rise to power. You truly believe we should relinquish control, after everything it cost to gain it? We believe, Harrington said firmly, that the moment we become what we overthrew, we lose the moral authority that justified our actions. Earth can lead without dominating. And if the Council disagrees, Mercer challenged. A tense silence fell over the chamber. The question laid bare the fundamental division forming within Earth's leadership. Those who saw conquest as a means to an end, and those who feared it becoming an end in itself. Then perhaps, Clark said quietly, we implemented the wrong protocols. The implied threat was clear. The same team that had engineered Earth's bloodless coup retained the knowledge and capability to challenge the Council if necessary. Director Kwan studied Clark's expression for a long moment before nodding slowly. The reclamation protocols will proceed as scheduled. Regional elections will begin in the outer territories within 6 months. Director, Mercer protested. We can't. We can and we will, Quan interrupted. The Silent Dominion was never about creating an empire. Counselor, it was about securing humanity's place in the galaxy. That place must be earned through leadership, not merely seized through force. As the meeting concluded, Clark, Egan, and Harrington remained behind. They stood at the observation window overlooking Earth's surface, far below. The planet they had fought to protect, now the center of a galactic confederation. They'll try again, Egan predicted. The temptation of absolute power doesn't fade easily. Then we'll need to be vigilant, Harrington replied. The same patience that won the galaxy can preserve its freedom. Clark nodded, her gaze fixed on the distant horizon. We sat in silence once to save humanity from subjugation. If necessary, we can speak out to save the galaxy from the same fate. The three architects of Earth's silent revolution stood together, watching the sun set on the first year of a new galactic order, one built on the paradoxical power of silence, and the courage to break it when necessary. 5 years after the Conclave's surrender, the Earth Consortium had evolved into the Galactic Confederation, with regional councils governing their territories under a framework of shared principles. Earth maintained significant influence, but had progressively transferred administrative control to local authorities. On the anniversary of the surrender, a commemoration ceremony was held at the Celestial Conclave Station. Representatives from every major world attended, no longer segregated by species or status, but arranged in collaborative working groups. The original synthetic proxies, the silent figures that had changed galactic history, stood in a place of honor, now deactivated, but preserved as historical artifacts. Beside them stood the real Dr. Clark, Colonel Egan, and Ambassador Harrington, older now, but still commanding respect. As Harrington addressed the assembly, her words echoed through chambers once filled with pompous ceremonies and empty rituals. 5 years ago, humanity chose silence when faced with demands for submission. That silence concealed preparation, determination, and ultimately, power. Today, we choose to speak, not to command, but to collaborate, not to rule, but to serve. The transition hadn't been perfect. The Eben Syndicate had attempted several insurgencies before finally accepting incorporation into the Confederation. Resource disputes still occurred, though now mediated through established protocols rather than military threats. Most significantly, Earth's Security Council had undergone its own silent revolution. Director Quan had maintained the commitment to the reclamation protocols despite resistance, gradually replacing hardliners, like Counselor Mercer, with those who shared the original vision. After the ceremony, Clark found herself alone in what had once been the grand negotiation chamber. The tiered platforms that had once separated species by rank and power had been replaced with a single-level floor, symbolizing the new equality. Contemplating your handiwork, Dr. Clark? The voice belonged to Elder Varric, the Varathian who had warned her years ago about the dangers of silence. He had since become a respected member of the Confederation's Oversight Committee. Contemplating change, she replied. Not all of it my doing. No, he agreed, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. The most significant changes came after the conquest, when you chose to honor promises that could easily have been broken. It wasn't easy, Clark admitted. There were those who saw no reason to relinquish power once gained. There always are, Varric said. On every world, in every species. The truly remarkable thing is not that such voices existed, but that they did not prevail. Clark smiled. They still might. The work is ongoing. As it should be, the elder replied. Perfect systems exist only in theoretical models. Living governance requires constant adjustment. They stood in comfortable silence, watching delegates from dozens of worlds mingling freely. Former enemies now collaborated on shared challenges, resource management, defense against extragalactic threats, cultural exchange programs. Your silence won you the galaxy, Varric observed, but your words are shaping it into something worth having. Clark considered this. Perhaps that's the true lesson. Silence can be power, but speech, honest speech, can be something greater. A wisdom my people are still learning, Varric admitted. Centuries of ritual and hierarchy do not fade quickly. Nor do they fade completely, came another voice. Embassy Proconsul Zandril approached, his crystalline form still impressive, but now adorned with the simple insignia of the Confederation, rather than the elaborate regalia of the Accord. Proconsul, Clark greeted him with respect. Merely representative now, he corrected gently. Though I find I prefer it. Less ceremonial burden, more meaningful work. A surprising adaptation, Varric noted with what might have been amusement. Necessity breeds adaptation, Zandril replied. Your human silence taught us that, Dr. Clark. We had grown complacent in our rituals, our elaborate speeches signifying nothing. You showed us that true power lies beneath the surface. And yet here we are, talking, Clark said with a smile. Talking, yes. But saying something of substance, that makes all the difference. Zandril gestured to the chamber around them. This place once echoed with empty words. Now it hosts genuine dialogue. An improvement, I think. As the three representatives, human, Vorathian, and crystalline, stood together, Clark reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From Earth's desperate gamble to this new galactic order, the path had been neither straight nor easy. But the destination, imperfect though it might be, seemed worth the struggle. Outside the station's panoramic windows, Earth's fleet still maintained vigilance, though in reduced numbers. The threat of force remained an unspoken reality, but increasingly, it was the promise of cooperation that maintained the peace. In time, perhaps even that implicit threat would fade, replaced by genuine interdependence. Until then, humanity would remain watchful, ready to speak when necessary, but never forgetting the power of silence. As delegates filed in for the next session, Clark took her place at the table, no longer at the lowest tier, but among equals. The galaxy had been won through silent dominion. Keeping it would require voices raised in honest dialogue, the harder but more enduring path to lasting peace. 10 years after the Conclave's surrender, Dr. Naomi Clark stood on the observation deck of her research vessel, watching as a new wormhole stabilization ring came online at the edge of known space. The massive structure, a collaboration between human engineers and Vorathian theoretical physicists, promised to open travel to previously unreachable sectors of the galaxy. Magnificent, isn't it? The voice belonged to Lyria 7, once a junior aide to the Crystalline Accord, now head of the Confederation's scientific exchange program. Her crystalline form had matured, developing the complex facets that indicated wisdom and experience in her species. It is, Clark agreed. 10 years ago, our civilizations were preparing for conflict. Now we're exploring the universe together. Thanks to your silent dominion, Lyria 7 observed. Clark shook her head. That merely created an opportunity. What came after? The hard work of building trust, of proving we meant what we said about shared governance. That's what truly transformed the galaxy. On a nearby monitor, footage played from ceremonies across Confederate space, marking the decade anniversary. Colonel Egan, now General Egan, was visible at a military integration ceremony on the Chronac homeworld. Ambassador Harrington could be seen addressing the Confederation Assembly. Her diplomatic skills now focused on expanding relations with newly discovered civilizations beyond the former Council territories. Your synthetic proxies, Lyria 7 said carefully. They've become quite the cultural touchpoint. Several worlds have created monuments depicting three silent figures. Clark smiled. Ironic that tools of deception have become symbols of truth. Perhaps not so ironic, the crystalline scientist replied. They represented something real, humanity's determination to forge its own path. Alerts chimed across the observation deck as the wormhole stabilized completely, its swirling vortex settling into a controlled aperture. The first exploration vessel, crewed by representatives from 12 different species, prepared to make the inaugural journey. We've come so far, Clark murmured. And yet, challenges remain, Lyria 7 noted. The Eben Syndicate's recent petition for increased autonomy has created tension in the outer regions. As it should, Clark replied. A healthy confederation isn't without disagreement. It simply provides frameworks for resolving conflicts without resorting to force. The exploration vessel disappeared into the wormhole, carrying with it the hopes and curiosity of a unified galaxy. Clark found herself reflecting on the long, sometimes difficult journey from that silent confrontation in the conclave chamber to this moment of genuine collaboration. There had been setbacks, attempted coups by hardliners on several worlds, including Earth, resource disputes that threatened to escalate into regional conflicts, cultural misunderstandings that required patient mediation. Yet each challenge had been overcome, not through domination, but through persistent dialogue and compromise. What do you think we'll find on the other side? Lyria 7 asked, gesturing toward the wormhole. New civilizations, perhaps, Clark replied. New challenges, certainly. And if they're hostile? Clark considered the question. Then we'll face them together, with the combined wisdom of our peoples. The silent strategy worked once, against divided opponents who underestimated us. But true strength comes from unity, from many voices speaking as one. As if to emphasize her point, the exploration vessel's first transmission came through. Wormhole transit successful. New star systems confirmed. Proceeding with survey protocols. The voice belonged to a human captain, but the science officer who responded was Varathian, and the navigation specialist was Kronak. Different species, different evolutionary paths, now working in harmony toward shared goals. The silent dominion served its purpose, Clark said quietly. But this, cooperation, trust, genuine alliance, this is what we were really fighting for. Lyria 7's crystalline form caught the light from the wormhole, sending rainbow patterns across the deck. A worthy outcome from an unusual beginning? As Clark watched the teams working together across the ship, she felt a sense of completion. The desperate gamble that had begun with 3 silent figures in a hostile chamber had culminated in this moment of true partnership. The galaxy had been conquered not once, but twice. First through strategic silence, then through the harder, more lasting conquest of mutual respect. The silence had won them the galaxy. Their words, backed by actions, had transformed it into something worth preserving. In Earth's central archives, preserved in quantum stasis fields, 3 inactive synthetic proxies stood as silent witnesses to history. Their perfect, ageless faces, modeled after Dr. Naomi Clark, Colonel Marcus Egan, and Ambassador Layla Harrington, gazed impassively at visitors from across the galaxy who came to see the figures that had changed the course of interstellar politics through silence. Beside them, a simple plaque bore an inscription that had become something of a galactic proverb. True power does not always cry victory. Sometimes, it simply refuses to speak. But lasting peace comes only when silence gives way to honest words. In the chamber's quiet solemnity, visitors from 100 worlds contemplated how 3 silent figures had remade the galaxy, not through the weapons they wielded, but through the power of what remained unspoken.